Greetings and welcome back to room 303 in our talks with Walt as we reference our readings through the deathbed edition of Walt Whitman's Leaves of Grass. We turn now in our study of Song of the Open Road to passage number 12, sometimes referred to as the journeyer passage for reasons that will become self-evident. We have said before that Whitman is very influenced by his Homer and more particularly his Odyssey. In fact, he had passages of the Odyssey memorized and he would shout them or recite them to the waves as he was walking along the beach, so we're told. So as we turn now, our assumptions are that you have been following our stuff at learnstrong.net from the inscriptions all the way up and including our Song of the Open Road passage number 11. Now, the background that I just want to share here, and you can jot this one down if you're so inclined, is the idea of companionship. Now, we've seen this as central to our study of Leaves of Grass. Whitman is about pals. We all need pals. That is to say, the journey that we take is never alone. And as we've often said, euphemistically, obviously, in room 303, you got here by two people hooking up and exchanging fluids. Let's just say that out loud. And the fact that that is true, non-debatable, validates what we're also about to say. It's never been your life. It's never been. Leave me alone, I'll do whatever I want, it's my life. No, 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 no. From the moment of conception for you, it's never been about your life. It's always been about our life. We're all in this together. For example, your graduation is not your graduation. It's our graduation. Think about that. It's the graduation of everybody who was a part of your project. I am part of all that I have met, is the way Tennyson says it in Ulysses. We're going to have the pal observation here, the companionship observation. We'll begin, of course, with that let's go French word allons. Allons, after the great companions and to belong to them. They too are on the road. They are the swift and majestic men. They are the greatest women, enjoyers of calms of sea and storms of sea, sailors of many a ship, walkers of many a mile of land, habitués of many distant countries, habitués of far distant dwellings, trusters of men and women, observers of cities, solitary toilers, pausers and contemplators of tufts, blossoms, shells of the shore, dancers at wedding dances, kissers of brides, tender helpers of children, bearers of children, soldiers of revolt, standers by gaping graves, lowerers down of coffins, journeyers over consecutive seasons, over the years, the curious years, each emerging from that which preceded it, journeyers, as with companions, namely their own diverse phases, forth steppers from the latent, unrealized baby days, journeyers gaily with their own youth, journeyers with their bearded and well-grained manhood, journeyers with their womanhood, ample, unsurpassed content, journeyers with their own sublime old age of manhood or womanhood, old age, calm, expanded, broad, with the haughty breath of the universe, old age flowing free with the delicious nearby freedom of death. Now there's so much going on here, but right away notice in the opening lines, he will capitalize, did you see it? Capitalize the word companions. And right away, we're going to hear the word companions later, it won't be capitalized. In other words, you never walk alone. This is why we're a reader. This is why it's talks with Walt. In other words, you're never alone. You're always with somebody. The very fact that you say, leave me alone, it's my life, you don't say it in Russian, you say it in English. You say it in the language that was taught to you by somebody else. It's always been about our lives. It's never been about your life. So right from the beginning, notice it's the great companions, those who came before, right? And of course there's that famous line about standing on the shoulders of giants. We're really just pygmies standing on the shoulders of giants. We always are being aided by that which came before, right? And obviously to belong to them. And then notice it's the one lone exclamation point of the entire section. We've seen exclamation points. They too are on the road. In other words, everything is about the journey. And as you learn to read, everything is about the journey. In other words, that's why you're reading. Because then all of a sudden you know, oh, Shakespeare's pointing out to me that all this stuff I'm dealing with, somebody else dealt with. Right, right. Milton showing us. These are not new questions. Why do these terrible things have to happen? That the Odyssey question is obviously our Milton question. They're swift, majestic. He loves that word majestic. We saw it back in passage 6. Men, they're the greatest women. Notice the inclusivity. It's not just for Whitman ever about men. It's also about the women. It's all of them. And then the only use of this word in all of Leaves of Grass, we like to point out the times when these words are special words. Enjoyers of calms of seas and storms of seas, except all pleasure and pain, because they're all tools of training and therefore necessary, right? Our theodicy observation. And then he'll start to list sailors of many a ship, walkers of many a mile of land. Remember, go back to our Song of Myself, passage 46. It's both walking and it's on the water. Habitues that is to say, visitors, right? Habitues of many distant countries. We're obviously back to Saludamon. Habitues of far distant dwellings. Trusters of men and women. Observers of cities. Whitman himself, a great observer. Solitary toilers. Obviously, all artists know that feeling. Pausers and contemplators. He loves this idea of contemplation, right? Of tufts. Notice we're back to grass, as in leaves of grass. Blossoms. Shells of the shore. He loved to pick up shells on the shore, and obviously that's, kind of one of those fun things as well. Dancers. We've always said no dancing in 303, and yet here we are. Dancers at wedding dances. Kissers of brides. Think about the times that kissing gets mentioned in Leaves of Grass and how important it is. Tender helpers of children. Bearers of children. This idea of children. Remember, passage 6, a child came to me asking, what is the grass? You'll recall, right? Soldiers. We're going to get to this with drum taps, so put it in your notes at 3a. Soldiers of revolt. Standers by gaping graves because of the American Civil War and Whitman's involvement in it as a nurse. He saw a lot of dead bodies lowered into the ground. And so, notice, it's everything for Whitman on the open road. It's not just all of the happy stuff. It's also the sad stuff. It's the challenging. It's the hard stuff. Lowers down of coffins. And then 6 times, we're going to get this word journeyers that gets used. And obviously, we're paying tribute to Homer's Odyssey, right? Journeyers over consecutive seasons. I would circle the word consecutive if you have your volume, because that is what life is. It's one thing after another thing after another thing. Remember at 3a, it will be Shelley who says in Ode to the West Wind, if winter comes, can spring be far behind? That idea that there's always something else coming, right? Journeyers, he says, as with companions, journeyers over consecutive seasons over the years. He'll call them the curious years, each emerging from that which preceded it. Growth, right? Growth. Out of nothing on Ruthie's tree comes all these blooms again. And it's always amazing to see it. And like, how does that happen? How does that work? It's quite remarkable. Then the next journeyers. Journeyers, he says, as with companions, namely their own diverse phases. And then this famous line. Listen to the rhythm of this line. Read it out loud if you want to play with it. Fourth steppers, only use of this word all the way through Leaves of Grass. Fourth steppers from the latent, unrealized baby days. Notice what he said in passage 6 of Song of Myself. Perhaps you've been on it all your life, the journey, and never knew it. Right? That is to say, your whole life has been a journey. It's just possible you never knew that that's what it was. And here, it's the baby days, the unrealized baby days. Do you think it's possible to be a senior in high school and it is your unrealized baby days? It's funny, seniors don't like this because they like to think of themselves as all grown up. What if this is your baby days? Maybe. And of course, when you're 50, you'll probably look back to it in the same way that now you look back to your 6th grade year and go, man, I was such a child then. See, this is the point, right? And out of these moments grow the next bit of you, whatever that will be. Journeyers, gaily and with their own youth. Journeyers, we're going to come to the old men here in a second, right? Journeyers with their bearded and well-gained manhood. Remember, I told you that, like Milton, hair matters. And we're always talking about beards in Leaves of Grass, bearded and well-grained manhood. Notice grained, as in Leaves of Grass. See it? Journeyers with their womanhood, ample, unsurpassed. We're going to hear this word unsurpassed in Wound Dresser number 1, unsurpassed heroes. Unsurpassed, we're back to content. You remember passage 1, content and lighthearted, I take to the open road, right? Journeyers with their own sublime old age of manhood or womanhood. And now he'll finish with old age. Old age, calm, expanded, broad, with the haughty breath, remember haughty from Song of Myself, passage 3, of the universe. Old age, flowing, free, remember passage 1, free. With the delicious, remember passage 1, delicious, old delicious burdens. Nearby freedom of death. Hey, do you guys remember this? We talked about it, but let's just go back and revisit it one more time just because it's fun. Do you remember the final lines of Song of Myself, a child came to me, what's the grass? Do you remember these set of lines? What do you think has become of the young and old men. And what do you think has become of the women and children? They are alive and well somewhere. The smallest sprout shows there is really no death. And if there ever was, it led forward life and does not wait at the end to arrest it and cease the moment life appeared. All goes onward and outward. Nothing collapses, and to die is different from what anyone supposed, and luckier. Now this idea of the universe of that line takes us back to starting from Paumanok 12. All the things of the universe are perfect miracles, he says. Well, how are we going to finish this passage? Well, we're never alone. And there's some comfort. There's tremendous comfort in this reality, right? We never travel alone. You'll remember that Tennyson will say in Ulysses, old age hath yet its honor and its toil, death closes all, but something ere the end, some work of noble don't be yet be done, not unbecoming men that strove with gods. No matter how old you get, there'll always be something else to do. You'll never find yourself sitting down and not needing to hear Virgil's up on your feet. This is no time to tire. Obviously, Inferno, passage 24. At to be, the repetitions and the echoes are all there. I love the rhythms, though, and this is often overlooked in a study of Leaves of Grass. Again, I'll just read it because it's so much fun. Fourth steppers from the latent, unrealized baby days. I mean, just say that line out loud when you're out for a walk with your puppy or whatever, and just enjoy the way that line itself makes you want to step differently. At 3a, we've mentioned Tennyson's Ulysses. Hey, do you remember from your biblical text, Hebrews 12:1, we're surrounded by this great cloud of witnesses that are all watching? Do you remember it from T.S. Eliot's Hollow Men? Those who have crossed with direct us the death's other kingdom, remember us if at all, not as lost bones, violent souls, but only as the hollow men, the stuffed men. The idea that your great-great-great-grandma is watching you make the decisions that you make. Whoa, what an interesting idea. If at all that's possible for you to believe in, how does that forever change the way that you approach everything that you're doing in your life? Here, the great companions, they're all watching, they're all there. They're all applauding, they're all celebrating. This is an idea we ran across, obviously, in the inscriptions passage as well. Finally, at 3b, well, how are we going to own a passage like this? How do we make it our own? Let me ask you a few questions that maybe you can consider. Who are your great companions? Like, what are the greatest texts you've ever read that you carry with you? What are those, back to passage 1 of Song of Myself? What are your old delicious burdens? Who do you have in your life that is, you would qualify it as a great companion? And then obviously the inverse of this, and this will sound very much like our study of Wordsworth's Tintern Abbey, little, nameless, unremembered acts of kindness and love. Are you a great companion to anyone in your life who's younger than you? Do you have anyone in your life that would say in an interview, that person is my great companion, and I kind of take them with me in memory or whatever? How about this one? Can you imagine what it's like to be old? Like, what's that going to be like? Old age, right? This idea of, can you see it again? Flowing free with the delicious nearby freedom of death. What an amazing way to think about growing old. Yay! Of course, this takes us back to Byzantium, sailing to Byzantium, the great Yeats poem, an aged man is but a paltry thing, a tattered coat upon a stick, unless soul clap its hands and sing, and louder sing forever tattered in its mortal dress. As you age, your soul wants to go bye-bye. That is to say, you've been swinging at that park all your life, and that van's been there waiting. It'll always be there waiting. And because you know that, it's not about fear, it's about freedom. That fact that you have to leave the park is freedom. It isn't slavery. It's an invitation to swing well. Enjoy the experience of swinging, because you don't get to do it for long. And guess what? All the great companions got to swing at the park too, and they all had to go bye-bye too. What a fascinating idea. To finish, is it possible that Walt Whitman is becoming one of those great companions for you? Tear out a few pages of an old copy of Leaves of Grass and carry it with you when you travel somewhere. Thank you.